I mean, look, what more do you even want me to say? Hirohiko and Chihiro's rivalry is quite literally everything I could have ever wanted out of a dynamic like this. This chapter of Kagurabachi has wholeheartedly convinced me that Hokuzono heard all of our complaints about losing Sojo as a rival and just went fully balls deep into the idea of a philosophical foil type character that Chihiro needs to just continually grow and develop. Now, Chihiro already had a massive amount of potential to begin with from the start of the series. I mean, that much is apparent just based off the fact of how strong he was with absolutely no formal training or any kind of sword technique at all when it came to combat. Chihiro was basically just freeballing the whole killing thing since his revenge began about 3 years ago. Now that he has someone like Hirohiko to bounce back and forth with over the course of the series to keep benefiting Chihiro and force him to advance at an even faster rate than he would have ever normally, is a good thing. Why? Well, because Hirohiko is essentially the exact same type of intuitive freestyler as Chihiro. The only difference being that Hirohiko might honestly just be better at it than Chihiro is, as it's revealed in this chapter that from the ripe age of 3, Hirohiko was forced to murder a man with his own teeth that was in the process of assaulting him. And from that day on, killing was natural to him, which, yeah, no surprises there. But more importantly, the flow of spirit energy inside of Hirohiko was able to run freely through him and was almost pure instinct to him at this point. His innate desire to survive was so strong, it would constantly give birth to unorthodox methods of attack, as Hirohiko has never once really subscribed to any school of thought or traditional aspects of combat. His origami sorcery, although expert, was something he developed himself, and normally Hirohiko just trusts his own ability to handle a situation regardless of relying on some other type of thing, and is always just gonna find whatever weird way he needs to accomplish the goal in front of him. This not really only led to an extremely abstract sword style that Hirohiko developed, which is just being able to change and regrip a sword between both hands effortlessly, behind your back, front, fakey. It's all just child's play to him. Ironically enough though, it's the exact maneuver that makes the EI White Purity sword style so difficult to grasp. In a vision, we get to meet the original creator of the EI White Purity style, Swordmaster Itsuo Shirakai. When this technique was first developed, it was based off of the idea that something that is faster usually is almost always stronger. So in order to achieve the highest speed in swordsmanship, Master Shirakai had to grip the sword backwards with the blunt side facing his opponent to better reach a higher pace of attack. Although, this is what also made this so difficult because not only are you facing the blunt side to your opponent, the White Purity style user then has to regrip the blade and twist it 180 degrees to actually attack their opponent with the bladed side, obviously. Because of this unusual vulnerability that you're putting yourself in, as well as the handicap that you're placing on yourself, a lot of the swordmasters of Shirakai's era laughed and brushed him off as a fool. Not only was the sword style just completely inefficient, but it was almost impossible for a person to maintain their charged up spirit energy during that regripping phase. Spirit energy charging requires complete concentration, and just one distraction or wrench in that thought process can just ruin the flow entirely, which is exactly why having to mindfully switch up the way you're holding the sword mid-attack can cause a problem for so many people, which is exactly why it's only ever been mastered by 3 people. This is definitely an esoteric sword style that not too many people use, and you can even see by the nameplate we get in a couple chapters earlier that it is almost in extinction now, except with Chihiro and Hirohiko being maybe the only people that are able to recreate it. It is also why, even though Chihiro is this gifted learner type and has perceptive eyes that allow him to more easily recreate the actions that he sees, an additional night of training was nowhere near enough time for Chihiro to fully grasp the sword style. Now, on the contrary, for someone like Hirohiko, who is just regripping his sword over and over again in a single action, if not more, is not constrained by any habitual training styles or ingrained instincts betraying him as he tries to learn all these different sword styles, it's almost as if the White EI Purity style was made directly for people like Hirohiko. Because as Chihiro is struggling to surpass Hirohiko's new improvised sword technique, meanwhile striving to find the trick to master the White Purity style himself, his concentration is ultimately broken because Hirohiko not just mocks Chihiro for relying on someone else's teachings to win, he shows him how pointless it is by, in midair, Hirohiko just spins around and mimics the white EI purity style almost to a T, flawlessly and instantly pinning down the base foundation of the technique and executing a dash strike at Chihiro. Now, Hirohiko doesn't immediately master the ability, it's still very difficult for him to use, he even admits that it's hard, but it's crazy that this was developed off of Chihiro's incomplete white purity style. So the fact that he was able to match Chihiro's progress in just one usage doesn't bode well for anybody, because Chihiro knows that this last clash that we are leading up to by the end of the chapter is going to make or break this battle. And again, this is exactly what I wanted out of a rivalry like this. Two people just constantly helping the other better themselves and become extremely strong fighters. And the growth during the fight is always the best way. Just watching Hirohiko download EI White Purity style like nothing is the exact kind of thing I'm trying to see in my shonen almost all of the time. It makes Hirohiko so much more of a formidable threat than he already was, considering this sword gripping technique was already tough to deal with, something that he developed on the fly, and now we know, almost similar to Chihiro, everything this guy sees in battle is at risk of being added to his arsenal later. Both of these characters' ceilings are way past the sky, and despite living entirely two different lives, they are repeatedly coming to the same conclusions, which reinforced to me that really, whether Chihiro wants to admit it or not, they are most likely kindred spirits, perhaps even bound together by fate, because regardless of how this chapter ends, these two characters' journeys are not anywhere close to over, especially with Hirohiko not even unveiling Kumayori yet. As Chihiro and Hirohiko ready themselves, holding to their unique method of replication, they both know it's whoever is in this clash that's the fastest that will win. Chihiro begs himself to break his limits, but once they both launch forward, that sense of impending doom falls right on top of him. Chihiro knows, at this very second, Hirohiko has actually achieved a greater mastery than Chihiro did. At least until, from his peripheral vision, Chihiro catches a glimpse of Iori Samura, fully awakened, her original sword skills and combat abilities sealed within the memory spell that the Masumi enchained her with. Now that those chains are broken, the girl effortlessly wields a katana with grace, swiftly slicing through every hostile threat in her direction. Not necessarily to kill, but more so shave away the danger in the most delicate and precise way possible. And that brief second, as Chihiro's life flashes before his eyes, just that demonstration of Iori's experience is enough to add on to his own and finish the puzzle, give him that last piece that Chihiro needs to visualize completely Somura's example of the white EI purity style. With a crystal clear replica in his head, as Chihiro's eyes turn back to meet Hirohiko's, that previous advantage the boy of freedom had slips away almost as soon as it came to him. Chihiro cuts right through Hirohiko's blade like it was butter and slashes the boy right across his chest, just dashing right by him without missing a single beat. Chihiro is even surprised by this, as this was definitely the final click in place that gets the EI White Purity style into his hands of mastery, directly parallel to Iori, who after dicing up the Datenseki Crystal Warriors in her way, also opens her eyes to the truth. And now, this is just my personal interpretation, but considering the description of Iori's sword technique not being designed to kill, instead using the speed to delicately and precisely cut away danger, it makes sense why this was the missing piece that Chihiro just could not grasp. For an Avenger whose entire identity has been surrounded around killing and slaughtering those who hurt his father and also taking out whoever gets in the way of accomplishing that goal, slashing his blade without the intention to kill is probably something he would have never even thought of. I mean, frankly, it's probably something a lot of swordsmen don't think of in a world like Kagurabachi. It's honestly most likely the missing piece that Hirohiko was losing as well that made him lose that clash. It's obvious, based off of this description, he probably was wounded non-lethally. I'm sure he'll have plenty of time to consider all of this new information and make something completely new out of it much later down the line. Because that being said, with Iori and Chihiro both in their elements now, mind's eye open. Kuguri is not going to be able to handle these two threats alone, and sure, Hirohiko's insane growth was fun to watch this arc, but Chihiro has now bested his rival twice in round 2. So we really won't know what's going on until next week, because knowing how fast-paced this can all be, you really never know what's about to come next. I mean, Hirohiko's inclusion alone was pretty much a wild card, so I would just hate to see what's coming next if the stakes are only just beginning to go up. But you already know that I will be here with you when that chapter comes out to talk about it. I make videos every week about Kagurabachi or any other manga series you might be reading weekly, so check the channel out. Don't be scared to like, don't be scared to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.